Despite India insisting that His Holiness the Dalai Lama's visit is purely religious, there is no political connotation to it, China has strongly objected to the Dalai Lama's visit and said this will impact India-China relations. What does this mean? Let me quickly bring in General Bikram Singh, former Chief of the Army Staff, who joins us exclusively on India Today. General, welcome on the show. You understand China very well, General. China has strongly objected to Dalai Lama's visit. General, why is China so touchy about Dalai Lama visiting Arunachal Pradesh?
Gaurav, if you see historically, China has always objected to all high-level visits by our government officials, by our political leaders, and for that matter even Dalai Lama. And it had objected earlier as well in 2009 when Dalai Lama had gone to Arunachal Pradesh. But when you link it with the sensitivities of China, I feel the Dalai Lama visit perhaps brings in an element of fear from the point of view of Tawang being one of the important cultural center of the Tibetan Buddhists. It also actually has the second largest, most prominent monastery which is there in Tawang. And the Chinese fears that perhaps this center, this Sanctum Sanctorum, this monastery perhaps could be utilized for further fueling the secessionist tendencies in Tibet Autonomous Region.
Okay.
So I think that the fears stem from there. And the other thing is that you would have seen last year again in October, they had objected to the US envoy to India, Mr. Verma, Ambassador Verma's visit. I think that was on the 21st of October, if I'm not wrong, last year.
Yes.
During the Tawang Festival. Now that again brings in an element of fear that perhaps our engagement with China, our strengthening, widening and deepening military relations and our strategic partnership with the United States is another concern. But in this particular case, essentially I feel it is on account of the importance of Tawang, which holds the second largest monastery, become the cultural center of the Tibetan Buddhists.
Okay, so how real are Chinese fears? We've seen the kind of response His Holiness the Dalai Lama got when he visited Arunachal Pradesh, and this visit has just started. How real are Chinese fears that this could have an impact on what's happening in Tibet, General?
Look, I personally feel that given the present bilateral engagement, constructive engagement between the two countries, China would logically resort to this kind of rhetoric. But I do not see, the stalling of any of our initiatives with China. We are integrating economically. In fact, if you really come to think of it, the present figures are at $70 billion US. The trade, the joint trade which is there between India and China. Okay. We are integrating as far as our economic elements of national power are concerned, which brings in certain degree of, I would say, interdependencies which militate against the use of force. I do not visualize that anything is going to happen at the military level.
Look at the kind of response that's coming in.
This kind of rhetoric would go on at the diplomatic circles.
Yes, the kind of response that's coming in from the Chinese government spokesperson, General, the response: India, in disregard to China's concerns, arranged for Dalai Lama's visit to the disputed part of eastern China-Indian border, causing serious damage to China's interests and China-India relations. So this is the statement that comes from the Chinese Foreign Office. Is this a threat? What does this statement mean, General?
No. You see, Gaurav, this kind of statement was expected when the government, resorts to, I would say, calibrated audacity to permit such visits. And incidentally, this is not the first visit. The last visit was in 2009. Dalai Lama had gone there and the previous government had approved that. So this kind of rhetoric would be there, and I think the only thing is that we need to continue to strengthen the bilateral mechanism, institutions which are over there to make sure we maintain peace and tranquility, and we allow the political process to move ahead, to make sure that engagement strengthens. And of course, but we cannot also, while we are well-meaning, we cannot allow any of our neighbors to actually transgress into our autonomy and question our sovereignty.
Yes,
and I think
clearly
that's where the government has taken a very, they can't bully us. And
China can't decide. China can't decide.
The government has taken a very calibrated stance, I would say, where
China can't decide who will visit Arunachal Pradesh and who will not.
Exactly.
So you agree with the government stance?
It's an integral part of India. Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree with that. And I'm glad that after a very, very long time, we are slowly getting out of the 1962 syndrome. I have seen, I'm telling you, right from my second lieutenant days when I got posted over there, the kind of passivity which was there in our engagement with China post 1962. And I'm glad, and by no means I'm trying to say that we should indulge in a very boisterous behavior or jingoism. But let me tell you, since 62 there is a lot of improvement as far as the military dispositions are concerned, our infrastructure is concerned, our forward deployment is concerned, the combat ratios are concerned, the synergy between the three, the essentially two services, the Air Force and the Army are concerned. So therefore, given all that, I suppose there is nothing to worry. We have the might to be able to withstand or deal with various contingencies, but by no means as a former chief I'm suggesting that we start flexing our muscles. It is not required. We got to ensure that there is peace and tranquility, but this kind of behavior has to go on. After all, if you see what China has done, China has always tried to throw a spanner, whether it's with regard to terrorism with Pakistan or our aspirations with regard to the nuclear supply.
In fact, that is my next question to you, General. There is something that India...
interest as well.
Oh, absolutely. And that's my next question, because India clearly needs to realize China is no friend of ours. China is blocking the sanctions against Maulana Masood Azhar, and China is blocking India's entry to the nuclear suppliers group. So India needs to tell China thus far and no further.
I'm with you. If in fact I remember once I used a term which some of the media was quite critical about. I had used the term peer competitors. When you look at two neighbors of this kind, we are competitors. We are though not enemies. We have contentious issues, but ultimately I think prudence demands that we strengthen our bilateral relations to be able to move forward on the political front. Through the dialogue that is taking place through the special representatives of both the governments, and we arrive at a mutually acceptable, solution, resolution to the vexed problem of the boundary issue.
Okay, one question, General. When you talk about the boundary issue, we used to see a lot of Chinese incursions take place at one point of time, whether in eastern Ladakh or in pockets of Arunachal Pradesh. There is apprehension. Could this lead to a skirmish? Could it escalate? And are we prepared to deal with any contingency, General?
Look, firstly, Gaurav, these incursions that have been taking place, I would say, are owing to the differing perceptions on the line of actual control. I mentioned this earlier a number of times on the television that even our patrols are getting into China from that point of view, and their media should be reporting that as an incursion by the Indian patrols, which is not being done. So what happens is the perception of the Chinese is to a particular point where their patrols come. Our patrols go well into China, up to the perceived line of the LAC as per our thought process. And as you recall, you would have seen that even the Honorable Prime Minister during the visit of the President of Chinese, he made a mention of this, that we need to finally move ahead to ensure that we are able to identify the LAC on ground. This has to be done. But coming on to the use of force, of a skirmish or perhaps a duel or an engagement on the line of actual control, well, let me tell you, I don't think it will ever happen, because the present mechanisms, and especially with the Border Defence Cooperation Agreement of 2013, which has put in place a very, very comprehensive mechanism, I do not visualize that there will be any possibility of any, I would say, use of force by either side. We have enough mechanism to be able to diffuse the situations. We got good communications. We got flag meetings taking place. We got special border personnel meetings that take place. We are engaging, on both the militaries on the cultural front, celebrating jointly the national days, the important festivals and military days. We are engaging in non-contact sports. So there is a large amount of bonhomie which is actually developing. And of course, ultimately, mind you, military always takes the directions from the political masters.
Yes.
But I do not think that given the wisdom of both the sides and given the fact that there is far more, benefits which accrue from a constructive engagement and from a peaceful peace and tranquility on the borders, any of the sides would be keen to sort of, transform this present peace profile into anything in the use of force. I don't visualize that happening.
General,
plus, another point I would like to mention here, sorry if you have time, is that
go ahead.
Chinese...
Go ahead, sir.
Gaurav, my only point is from the point of view of, if you see the Chinese strategy, I mean, as the former chief, if I can mention this, China is aspiring to be an uncontested regional power by about 2025. It's looking at becoming a global power by 2050. Would China like to indulge in anything which will, divert its attention from these two important goals, I would say? So, given that, when nations decide, this kind of talking, rhetoric goes on, but ultimately nations look at their visions. And the vision of China is to become, as I said earlier, looking at a regional and global status in terms of power. And therefore, I do not think it will indulge in any kind of, use of
given
force.
the fact it wants to be...
non-kinetic arena, cyber warfare, psychological operations.
What does China want to do? Because if China says this will have an impact on India-China relations, so what will China do, given India has pushed the envelope and said Dalai Lama is free to visit and not just once, as many times as he wants?
No, look, the government is in a very unambiguous, a very explicit manner told, in fact, the Minister of State Home has very categorically brought out. It's an integrated part. And this, incidentally, this was one question which was even thrown at me during my talk at the National Defense University in Beijing, during my visit in 2014. China is sensitive to this, definitely. But the issue is that I do not visualize any incident, escalating into the use of force. There may be a bit of, muscle flexing here and there in case required to show compatibility with the posturing at the political level, at the diplomatic level. But I do not see anything happening on the. We got very robust mechanisms. Let me tell you this.
Okay, General, many thanks for joining us here on India Today. General Bikram Singh, former Chief of the Army Staff, saying government of India has taken the right step. This is a step that needed to be taken. China may flex muscle, but India in full control of the situation, given mechanisms in place between India and China.